Lily was a whirlwind of imagination packed into a small, bright package. At 7 years old, the world was a canvas splashed with endless possibilities, and Lily was determined to explore every corner. This summer, that corner happened to be London. She dreamed of visiting England ever since her grandmother told her stories of kings, queens, and magical castles. She was visiting with her mom, dad, and older brother, Tom. Tom, being a teenager, was mostly interested in finding the nearest Wi-Fi spot, but Lily was wide-eyed, soaking everything in. The red double-decker buses, the bustling streets, and the charming little shops all felt like stepping into one of her favorite storybooks. But what truly captured Lily's imagination were the royal guards. She had seen pictures of them, of course, standing tall and proud in their scarlet tunics and bearskin hats. But seeing them in person outside Buckingham Palace was something else entirely. They were like figures from a fairy tale, so still and serious. Lily couldn't help but wonder what they were thinking behind those stern faces. Did they ever get bored? Did they ever smile? She imagined them as secret protectors of the realm, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice to defend the queen from dragons or mischievous pixies. She was absolutely captivated by their presence, and every time she saw one, she felt a thrill of excitement. She knew, somehow, that her London adventure was going to be filled with magic, and these guards were definitely part of it. The royal guard that Lily was currently observing seemed to be carved from stone. He stood ramrod straight, a giant of man in his bright red tunic. The black bearskin hat perched atop his head added even more to his already impressive height, making him seem almost otherworldly. His face was impassive, giving away absolutely nothing. He didn't blink, didn't fidget, didn't even seem to breathe. Lily watched him intently, trying to detect any sign of movement, any hint of personality behind that stoic mask. But there was nothing. He was a statue, a symbol of unwavering duty. His uniform was immaculate, every button gleaming, every crease perfectly pressed. The white belt and gloves added a sharp contrast to the scarlet tunic, making him even more striking. Lily imagined that it took hours to get dressed in such a precise manner. The way he held his rifle spoke volumes about his dedication. It wasn't just an object. It was an extension of himself, held with respect and precision. He stood guard outside Buckingham Palace, protecting the Queen and the royal family, and he took that responsibility incredibly seriously. It wasn't just a job. It was an honor, a sacred duty passed down through generations. Lily knew, somehow, that this guard would stand there all day, unmoving and unwavering, no matter what happened. He was a rock, a steadfast presence in the bustling city, a true symbol of England. And in Lily's young eyes, he was a hero. Lily, still gazing at the seemingly unblinking royal guard, hadn't noticed her family moving along with the throng of tourists. She was so engrossed in her fantasy about him battling dragons that she lost track of them completely. One moment, she was holding her mother's hand. The next, she was surrounded by a sea of legs. Panic began to bubble in her chest. She craned her neck, trying to spot her mom's bright yellow scarf or her dad's familiar baseball cap. But all she saw were strangers, tall people with maps, chattering groups speaking different languages, and prams being pushed through the crowd. The noise seemed to intensify. The sounds of the city, car horns, shouting vendors, and the constant murmur of voices, all blending into a confusing and overwhelming cacophony. Lily felt smaller and smaller, like she was shrinking into the pavement. She tried to push through the crowd, calling out, "Mom, Dad," but her voice was lost in the chaos. Tears welled up in her eyes. The magic she had felt just moments before was replaced by a cold, hard fear. Buckingham Palace, which had seemed so grand and exciting, now felt like a menacing maze. She spun around, desperately searching for a familiar face, but everyone was a stranger. The crowd pressed in on her, making it hard to breathe. Lily felt utterly and completely alone. The stoic royal guard, once a figure of fascination, now seemed miles away, an unreachable beacon in a sea of confusion. Desperation clawed at Lily's throat. She was surrounded by strangers. The noise was deafening, and the fear was overwhelming. She needed help, and she needed it now. Her gaze locked onto the tall, imposing figure of the royal guard. He seemed so strong, so unwavering, a symbol of protection in the midst of her chaos. Taking a deep breath, she gathered all her courage and cried out, "Help me!" The words were barely a whisper at first, lost in the rumble of the city. But she tried again, louder this time, her voice cracking with emotion. "Help! Please help me!" Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. She didn't know if the guard could hear her, if he would even care. But he was her only hope. She repeated her plea, her voice rising in a desperate wail. "I'm lost. Please help me." The sound tore through the air, a small, vulnerable cry in the heart of London. It was a sound filled with fear, loneliness, and a desperate plea for rescue. Lily clung to the hope that the guard, despite his stern appearance, would hear her, would see her, and would come to her aid. The fate of her London adventure, and perhaps her sense of security, hung in the balance. The royal guard had heard many sounds during his time on duty: the clicking of cameras, the chatter of tourists, the rumble of buses, and even the occasional heckler. But Lily's cry was different. It wasn't just noise, it was a sound of pure, unadulterated distress. For a moment, he remained perfectly still, his training demanding that he maintain his composure and focus. But beneath the bearskin hat, something shifted. The rigid set of his jaw softened ever so slightly. The unwavering gaze in his eyes flickered with a hint of surprise. It was a subtle change, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The little girl's cry had pierced through the layers of discipline and reserve, touching something deep inside him. A flicker of compassion crossed his face, like a fleeting shadow. He was still a royal guard, still on duty, but for a brief instant he was also a human being responding to the obvious pain of a child. He knew he was supposed to remain stoic, unmoving, but the sound of her fear tugged at his heart. He couldn't ignore it. The little girl needed help, and he, despite his orders, couldn't simply stand by and do nothing. Something had to be done. Now, ignoring years of training and strict protocol, the royal guard made a decision. He couldn't simply stand there while a little girl was so clearly distressed. It was a breach of everything he had been taught, but his heart told him it was the right thing to do. With a surprisingly fluid movement for such a large man in a cumbersome uniform, he knelt down, bringing himself to Lily's level. The bearskin hat seemed to tower above her, but his eyes were kind. He spoke softly, his voice a low rumble that was surprisingly gentle. "Hello there," he said, his voice barely audible above the din of the crowd. "Are you all right?" Lily, startled by the sudden movement, gasped and took a step back. But the guard's gentle tone and concerned expression reassured her. He didn't seem like a fairy tale figure anymore. He seemed like a person, a kind person who wanted to help. "It's all right," he continued, his voice soothing. "You're safe now. What's your name?" He kept his voice calm and steady, hoping to ease her fear. He knew that a small, lost child needed reassurance more than anything else. "Everything will be all right," he repeated, his words a comforting balm to her frightened heart. He hoped his actions would show her that even in a big, scary city, there were people who cared. Lily sniffled, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. The guard's gentle voice was like a lifeline in the swirling chaos. "Oh, Lily," she stammered, her voice still shaky. "My name is Lily." The guard nodded reassuringly. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. Well, you can call me Guard," he said with a hint of a smile that barely reached his eyes. He knew he couldn't reveal his name, but he wanted to give her something to hold on to. He continued to speak in a calm, measured tone, asking her simple questions. "How old are you, Lily? Where are you visiting from? Were you with someone?" Lily, slowly starting to calm down, answered his questions as best she could, her voice still trembling. She told him she was 7 years old, that she was visiting from America with her mom, dad, and brother, and that she had somehow gotten separated from them while looking at him. As she spoke, the guard pieced together the situation. The little girl was lost, scared, and completely alone in a foreign city. He knew he had to act quickly to reunite her with her family. The first step was to get her to trust him, and it seemed his gentle approach was working. She was no longer sobbing uncontrollably, and her breathing was becoming more regular. He had a feeling that everything was going to be all right. Knowing he couldn't leave his post, the guard reached for the small radio clipped to his belt. He spoke into it in a low, clear voice, careful not to cause any further alarm. "This is Guard Alpha 1 to Buckingham Palace Security," he said, his voice professional and authoritative. "I have a lost child here at the North Gate. She is approximately 7 years old, American, with blonde hair and wearing a blue dress with white polka dots. She is separated from her parents, requesting assistance in locating her family. Over." There was a brief pause, then a crackling voice responded, "Roger that, Alpha 1. We are dispatching security personnel to your location. Please remain with the child and provide reassurance. Over." The guard clicked off the radio and looked back at Lily, offering her a reassuring smile. "They're going to help us find your mom and dad, Lily," he said. "They're very good at finding people. We just need to wait here for a little while." He knew that waiting could be difficult for a young child, especially one who was already scared and upset. He needed to find a way to distract her, to keep her mind off her missing parents. He glanced around, considering his options. He couldn't leave his post, and he didn't have any toys or games with him. He would have to rely on his words, on his ability to tell a story, to keep Lily calm and safe until her family could be found. "Did you know," the guard began, his voice taking on a slightly more animated tone, "that Buckingham Palace wasn't always a palace? It used to be a house, a big, fancy house, but still just a house." Lily, intrigued, looked up at him, her eyes widening slightly. The story was already working its magic, pulling her away from her fear. "A long, long time ago," the guard continued, "a duke lived here. Then the king decided he wanted it, so he bought it. Over the years, different kings and queens added to it, making it bigger and grander until it became the palace we see today." He told her stories of royal weddings, of grand balls, and of the queen's corgis, making sure to use simple words and engaging descriptions. He explained how the royal standard flag flying above the palace meant the queen was home. He even told her a funny story about a time when one of the queen's corgis supposedly chased a squirrel into the palace gardens. Lily listened intently, her imagination taking flight once again. The fear that had gripped her moments before began to fade, replaced by a sense of wonder and fascination. The royal guard, the stoic figure she had admired from afar, was now telling her stories, keeping her safe and entertained. He was like a real-life fairy tale character, a protector and a storyteller all in one. And, for the moment, at least, she had forgotten all about being lost. Just as the guard was launching into a particularly exciting tale about the crown jewels, a commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. Two figures, their faces etched with worry, were pushing their way through, calling out Lily's name. "Lily! Lily, where are you?" Lily's head snapped up, her eyes widening with recognition. "Mom! Dad!" she cried, scrambling to her feet. Her parents, having frantically searched for her after realizing she was missing, had been directed to the North Gate by security. They rushed towards her, their faces transforming from anxiety to overwhelming relief. Lily's mother scooped her up in a tight hug, burying her face in Lily's hair. "Oh, Lily, we were so worried. We thought we'd lost you." Her father wrapped his arms around both of them, his eyes shining with tears. "We're so glad you're safe," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The relief in the air was palpable, a wave of joy washing over the scene. The fear and panic that had consumed them just moments before were replaced by an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They were family again, whole and safe. The nightmare was over. Once the initial wave of relief had subsided, Lily's parents turned their attention to the royal guard, who was still kneeling beside them. Their gratitude was overflowing. "Thank you. Thank you so much," Lily's mother said, her voice choked with emotion. "We don't know what we would have done without you. You were so kind to her." Lily's father stepped forward, extending his hand. "We are eternally grateful," he said, shaking the guard's hand firmly. "Your quick thinking and compassion made all the difference. You went above and beyond your duty." They praised his calm demeanor, his gentle words, and his quick action in contacting security. They told him that he had not only kept their daughter safe, but had also comforted her in a very scary situation. They recognized that he had broken protocol to help Lily, and they appreciated his humanity and willingness to put her needs first. "You're a true hero," Lily's mother added, her eyes filled with admiration. "We will never forget what you did for us today." They were so thankful that someone so dedicated and kind was there to help their daughter when she needed it most. They knew that this chance encounter with the Royal Guard would be a story they would tell for years to come. The Royal Guard listened to their heartfelt thanks, his expression remaining largely unchanged. The flicker of compassion that had momentarily softened his features was now gone, replaced by the stoic mask of duty. He simply nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement of his head. He couldn't express his emotions openly. That wasn't his role. But inside, he felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that he had made a difference in this little girl's life. With a practiced ease, he rose to his full height, his uniform perfectly aligned once again. He straightened his bearskin hat and adjusted his rifle, resuming his position as a silent sentinel. He didn't say a word, didn't offer a further smile. He simply turned and marched back to his post, resuming his unwavering vigil. He was once again the Royal Guard, a symbol of strength and duty. The emotional moment had passed, and he was back to his task of protecting Buckingham Palace and the royal family. He had shown compassion when it was needed, but now his duty called him back to his post. His actions spoke louder than words, demonstrating his unwavering dedication even after the heartfelt reunion. He was a true professional, balancing compassion with unwavering commitment. As her family turned to leave, Lily hesitated. She turned back to look at the Royal Guard, who was once again standing perfectly still, a silent sentinel in his scarlet uniform. He seemed like a statue, but Lily knew better. She knew that beneath that stoic exterior was a kind and compassionate heart. With a shy smile, she lifted her hand and waved. "Goodbye," she whispered, hoping he could hear her. The guard, of course, didn't react. He didn't wave back, didn't smile, didn't even blink. But Lily didn't mind. She knew that he had heard her, that he had seen her, and she knew that she would never forget him. As her family walked away, Lily kept glancing back at the Royal Guard, the image of his tall, imposing figure etched in her memory. He was no longer just a fairy tale character to her. He was a real-life hero, a symbol of kindness and protection. Her London adventure had taken an unexpected turn, filled with fear and then relief. But through it all, the Royal Guard had been there, a steadfast presence in the midst of the chaos. He was, without a doubt, unforgettable. He had shown her that even the most serious people can have the kindest hearts, and that even in a big, scary city, there are always people willing to help. The unforgettable Royal Guard had left an indelible mark on her young heart. Lily's encounter with the Royal Guard that day taught her something very important, that even people in positions of authority and seriousness can show great compassion. The guard, with his imposing uniform and stoic demeanor, seemed unapproachable at first. But beneath the surface, he was a kind and caring person who was willing to break the rules to help a child in need. The story of the little girl who cried out to the Royal Guard serves as a reminder that everyone, regardless of their job or status, has the capacity for kindness. It shows that even the smallest act of compassion can make a big difference in someone's life, especially for children who are vulnerable and scared. It highlights the importance of looking beyond appearances and recognizing the humanity in others. The Royal Guard could have easily ignored Lily's plea, but he chose to act, and his actions had a profound impact. It is a testament to the power of empathy and the ability of even the most serious individuals to connect with others on a human level. And it reminds us that a little bit of kindness can go a long way in making the world a better place, one small act at a time. The unforgettable Royal Guard proved that true strength lies not just in power and authority, but also in compassion and a willingness to help others.